The rain had been falling since late afternoon, turning the city streets into ribbons of silver light. David Carter stood in front of the mirror of his small apartment, adjusting a navy tie he hadn't worn in years. The fabric felt stiff around his neck, like it belonged to a different version of him, one who still believed in dinner reservations, romantic possibilities, and a future that wasn't measured by school pickups and grocery lists. "Dad, you look weird," 8-year-old Lily announced from the couch, wrapped in a blanket and holding a bowl of popcorn. David laughed despite himself. "Thanks, sweetheart. That's exactly the confidence boost I needed." Lily grinned. "Are you really going on a date?" "That depends on your Uncle Mark. He tricked me into this." The truth was, Mark had spent months trying to convince David to start dating again. Since his wife, Anna, had passed away 3 years earlier, David had buried himself in work and parenting. He was a reliable project manager at Reynolds Technologies, respected by co-workers but practically invisible outside the office. His world had become small, safe, and predictable. And lonely. Just one dinner, Mark had insisted earlier that week. "If it's terrible, I'll owe you 6 months of free babysitting." David had agreed mostly because Lily had overheard the conversation and looked at him with hopeful eyes. "You deserve to be happy too, Dad," she had whispered. Now, 30 minutes later, David dropped Lily off at Mark's apartment. Mark opened the door wearing a ridiculous grin. There he is. The man who still remembers how to use cologne. "I'm already regretting this." "You say that now. By the end of the night, you'll be thanking me." David rolled his eyes and headed toward the restaurant, a place far fancier than anything he would have chosen himself. Crystal chandeliers glowed through the windows, and the hostess greeted him with the kind of polished smile that made him suddenly aware of his department store suit. Then he saw her. Emma. She stood as he approached the table, offering a warm handshake and an easy smile that instantly dissolved some of his nervousness. "I'm glad you came," she said. "So am I," David admitted, surprised to realize he meant it. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Emma was a pediatric physical therapist, funny without trying too hard, and genuinely interested in hearing about Lily. She didn't give him the sympathetic look he'd grown used to when people learned he was a widower. Instead, she listened carefully, asking about Lily's obsession with astronomy and the cardboard rocket they were building together in the living room. For the first time in years, David forgot to check his phone. He was laughing at one of Emma's stories when the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. Conversation softened. Heads turned toward the entrance. A woman in a charcoal gray designer suit walked through the dining room with calm authority. Every employee seemed to straighten as she passed. David's stomach dropped. Sophia Reynolds. CEO of Reynolds Technologies. The billionaire whose name was on the building where he worked every day. She stopped directly beside their table. Her sharp eyes met his. Then, with a composed smile, she asked, "May I join you?" Emma looked puzzled. Mark, visible across the room, nearly choked on his drink. And David sat frozen, wondering why the most powerful woman in his company had just interrupted his blind date. David stared at Sophia Reynolds in stunned silence. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. Emma glanced between the sharply dressed executive and David, clearly trying to understand why the CEO of one of the country's largest technology companies was standing beside their dinner table. Sophia offered Emma a polite smile. "I apologize for interrupting your evening," she said gracefully. "This won't take long." Emma nodded politely. "Please, have a seat." David opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Sophia sat down with the calm confidence of someone who never needed permission to enter a room. The waiter immediately appeared, asking if she would like anything. "Just sparkling water," she replied before turning her attention back to David. "I've been looking for you." David blinked. "For me?" "Yes." His heart began to race. Had something gone wrong at work? Was there a problem with one of his projects? Had he made an expensive mistake without realizing it? I wasn't expecting to see you here, David admitted carefully. Sophia smiled faintly. Neither was I. Emma sensed the awkwardness and decided to break the silence. So, you two work together? David laughed nervously. Not exactly together. Sophia answered before he could continue. David works for my company. Emma's eyebrows lifted. Oh, you're his manager. David almost laughed. She's everyone's manager. Sophia chuckled softly. I suppose that's technically true. The tension eased just enough for everyone to breathe again. Sophia folded her hands neatly on the table. I hope you don't mind me saying this, David, but I've been reviewing several major projects over the past few weeks. David nodded cautiously. I noticed. And one name kept appearing. She looked directly into his eyes. Yours. David frowned. My department rarely deals with executive leadership. That's exactly the problem. Sophia's voice remained calm, but there was unmistakable disappointment beneath it. 3 of your proposals were submitted over the past 18 months. David nodded. They never moved forward. I know. You know. I read every one of them. David stared at her. Months of late nights. Weekend reports. Ideas he believed could save the company millions. Every proposal had disappeared without explanation. He had assumed they weren't good enough. Sophia shook her head gently. They never reached my office. David felt the ground shift beneath him. What do you mean? They were filtered out by middle management before they ever reached executive review. Emma looked from one to the other, realizing this conversation was about much more than business. Sophia continued. When I ordered an internal audit, your work surfaced repeatedly. She paused. Your cost-saving automation plan alone would have increased productivity across 3 divisions. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. So, someone buried my work. Sophia nodded once. I'm afraid so. For years, David had quietly blamed himself. He had questioned his abilities. Wondered whether he simply wasn't talented enough. Now he learned the truth. His work had never been rejected. It had never even been seen. Sophia leaned forward. I also learned something else. David waited. You submitted your resignation this morning. His face lost all color. How do you know that? I received the notification an hour ago. Emma slowly turned toward David. You were quitting. David looked embarrassed. I hadn't planned on telling anyone yet. I accepted another offer yesterday. Sophia reached into the leather folder she had carried with her. Without saying another word, she placed a sealed cream-colored envelope on the table between them. The company logo was embossed in gold across the front. David looked at it, then back at Sophia. What is this? She met his gaze with quiet determination. It's the reason I couldn't let you leave. David hesitated before reaching for the envelope, unaware that opening it would force him to choose between the career he had always wanted, and the life he had spent years trying to rebuild. David stared at the cream-colored envelope as if it might disappear if he looked away. The gold company seal shimmered beneath the restaurant lights. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the gentle music drifting through the dining room seemed distant. Sophia gave a small nod. Go ahead. David carefully broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. His eyes scanned the first page. Then widened. This can't be right. Emma leaned forward with quiet curiosity. What is it? David swallowed hard before answering. It's an executive director position. Sophia nodded. Effective immediately, if you choose to accept. David looked at her in disbelief. I've never even managed a department. You've been leading people without the title for years, Sophia replied. Your colleagues trust you. Your ideas consistently outperform expectations. The only thing you lacked was someone willing to notice. He continued reading. The salary was nearly double what he currently earned. There were stock options, leadership bonuses, and a private office at headquarters. It was more money than he had ever imagined making. His mind raced. A larger home. A college fund for Lily. No more worrying about unexpected medical bills or broken appliances. For the first time since Anna's passing, financial security felt possible. This changes everything, he whispered. Sophia smiled. I hope it does. But as David reached the second page, his excitement slowly faded. His expression became uncertain. Sophia noticed immediately. What is it? He looked up. This position requires international travel. She nodded. Several times each month. And evening meetings? Occasionally. David quietly set the papers back on the table. Emma studied his face. Instead of seeing excitement, she saw conflict. You don't look happy, she said gently. David forced a smile. I am. No, Emma replied softly. You're worried. He sighed. My daughter. Sophia remained silent, allowing him to continue. Lily has already lost one parent. He looked down at the offer again. I promised myself she'd never feel like she came second. Emma smiled kindly. You talk about her with so much love. David chuckled. She's my entire world. I can tell. He rubbed his forehead. This promotion is everything I've worked toward. But if I'm flying across the country every other week. He couldn't finish the sentence. Emma asked the question neither of them wanted to voice. Would you still be there for bedtime stories? David closed his eyes. Every evening, he and Lily read together before bed. Every Saturday they built something, birdhouses, puzzles, model rockets. Every Sunday morning they made blueberry pancakes while singing badly to old songs Anna used to love. Those moments weren't just routines. They were promises. Promises he had made to a little girl who had already experienced too much loss. Sophia watched him carefully. Most employees would have signed the offer within seconds. David hadn't even picked up the pen. For the first time in years, Sophia realized that ambition didn't look the same for everyone. Sometimes success wasn't measured by promotions. Sometimes it was measured by who was waiting for you at home. Emma reached across the table. You don't have to decide tonight. David nodded slowly. I know. Just then, his phone buzzed across the table. The screen lit up with one word. Lily. He smiled instinctively and answered. Hey, sweetheart. Instead of Lily's cheerful voice. He heard crying. Then the babysitter spoke, panic trembling in her voice. David. Lily has a high fever. She's asking for you. The color drained from David's face. Without another thought, he pushed back his chair and stood. Nothing, not a dream job, not a billionaire CEO, not even the biggest opportunity of his life, was more important than getting to his daughter. David didn't hesitate. The executive offer, the elegant restaurant, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, all of it vanished from his mind the moment he heard the fear in the babysitter's voice. I'm on my way, he said firmly into the phone. Stay with her. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He ended the call, grabbed his jacket, and looked apologetically at Emma. I'm so sorry. Emma stood immediately, concern replacing surprise. Go. Lily needs you. David turned to Sophia. I apologize, Ms. Reynolds. She shook her head. Don't. For a brief moment, the powerful CEO wasn't looking at an employee. She was watching a father. David picked up the promotion letter, then paused. After a second's thought, he gently placed it back on the table. I can't think about this right now. Sophia nodded with understanding. You shouldn't. Without another word, David hurried through the restaurant and disappeared into the rainy night. Emma watched through the window as David sprinted across the street without even opening his umbrella. A taxi stopped. He climbed inside and was gone. Emma slowly sat back down. She smiled softly. He's exactly the man Mark described. Sophia looked at her. What do you mean? Emma folded her hands. Most people would have spent 5 more minutes discussing that promotion. She glanced toward the empty chair. He didn't spend 5 more seconds. Sophia looked at the unsigned contract lying on the table. I've interviewed executives who claimed family came first. She sighed quietly. But when the choice became real, they chose work, Emma finished. Sophia nodded. Every time. For several moments, neither woman spoke. Finally, Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that rarely appeared during board meetings. I almost lost one of my best employees because my company rewarded people for sacrificing their lives. Emma tilted her head. What are you going to do? Sophia looked toward the restaurant entrance where David had disappeared. I'm going to fix it. The following morning, Reynolds Technologies felt different. At exactly 8 o'clock, Sophia walked into the executive boardroom carrying a thick folder. Every senior vice president was already seated. She didn't waste time. I reviewed our employee retention reports last night. The executives exchanged confused glances. Our highest performing employees are leaving. One executive cleared his throat. We've remained profitable. Sophia looked directly at him. Profit isn't the only measure of a healthy company. She placed David's forgotten promotion letter on the table. This employee nearly resigned because he believed no one valued his work. Silence filled the room. And when offered the promotion he deserved. She paused. He walked away because he believed success meant abandoning his daughter. No one dared interrupt. Sophia continued. That is not his failure. Her voice became firm. It is ours. Within days, she announced sweeping changes. Flexible schedules. Remote work options. Family emergency leave without penalty. Leadership evaluations based on results, not hours spent in the office. Employees were stunned. Morale soared almost overnight. Meanwhile, Emma visited David's apartment carrying homemade chicken soup, coloring books, and a small stuffed astronaut after learning about Lily's love for space. Lily's fever had already begun to break. The little girl smiled brightly when Emma handed her the toy. It's for me. Emma laughed. Only if you'll let me know whether astronauts like chicken soup. Lily giggled. David watched from the kitchen doorway, feeling something warm he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. David stared at the message on his phone. There's something I should have told you about that blind date. It wasn't my idea. He frowned. Not Mark's idea. After making sure Lily was asleep, he quietly stepped onto the apartment balcony and called his best friend. Mark answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call. David folded his arms. You have exactly 30 seconds to explain. Mark laughed nervously. I may have left out one tiny detail. Try again. It wasn't my setup. David blinked. What do you mean? The blind date was arranged by someone else. A long silence followed. Finally, Mark admitted the truth. A few months ago, I attended a charity fundraiser. Sophia Reynolds was there. David frowned. My boss. Yeah. Mark explained that he had been chatting with Sophia about work-life balance when she unexpectedly mentioned an employee she deeply admired. She didn't tell me his name at first, Mark said. She just described him. A widowed father. A man who stayed late only when absolutely necessary because he refused to miss bedtime with his daughter. Someone who quietly mentored new employees without asking for recognition. Someone whose ideas kept improving the company, even though others took the credit. I knew she was talking about you before she ever said your name. David leaned against the balcony railing, speechless. Mark continued. Sophia wasn't interested in dating you. David almost laughed. I never thought she was. No. She simply respected you. Then Mark revealed the biggest surprise of all. Sophia has been close friends with Emma for years. David's eyes widened. What? They've known each other since college. According to Mark, Emma had spent years volunteering at children's hospitals and community centers. She loved kids. She had never married, partly because she hadn't found someone who shared her values. When Sophia described David, Emma smiled and said only one sentence. I'd like to meet him. Mark grinned through the phone. So they asked me if I'd help. David shook his head in disbelief. You lied to me. I preferred the phrase, carefully omitted information. David laughed for the first time all day. You owe me. I already paid the babysitter. They both laughed. 2 weeks later, David met Sophia in her office. She slid the promotion letter across the desk once again. This time, she said with a smile, it's been updated. David opened it. His eyes immediately noticed the changes. Hybrid schedule. Limited travel. No meetings after 6 o'clock without his approval. Family first flexibility written directly into the contract. He looked up. You changed the position. I changed the company, Sophia replied. You reminded me that great employees shouldn't have to choose between being exceptional professionals and exceptional parents. David smiled. With confidence this time, he signed his name. 6 months later, Reynolds Technologies had become one of the country's best places to work. Employee turnover dropped dramatically. Productivity reached record highs. Families spent more evenings together. David thrived in his new leadership role without missing a single one of Lily's weekend science projects. Emma became a regular part of their lives, winning Lily's heart with astronomy books, homemade cookies, and endless patience. One sunny afternoon, the three of them sat together at Lily's school science fair. Lily proudly launched a small model rocket into the clear blue sky. As the rocket soared higher, David reached for Emma's hand. She smiled and squeezed it gently. Across the field, Mark waved with a smug grin. Told you one dinner could change your life. David laughed. It wasn't just the dinner. He looked at Lily's joyful smile, then at Emma beside him. Sometimes the greatest opportunities don't arrive as job offers or lucky breaks. Sometimes they begin with a friend who refuses to let you give up on life, and a blind date that leads you exactly where you're meant to be.